Hi, if only you knew the trouble I had trying to get this video done. I don't know what it is, but everything's harassing me. I'm going to read from a book, this one, because I think it's very, very important that we all know what's going on. Okay, and what he thought of. He is General Smedley Butler, and he was the most decorated American Marine general, and he wrote a book called War Is A Racket. Here is a very brief history of him. He was born in Westchester on July 30th, 1881. Educated at Haverford School and married Ethel C. Peters in June 1905. He was awarded the 2 Congressional Medals of Honor for the capture of Veracruz in Mexico in 1914 and the capture of Fort Riviera, Haiti in 1917. And then he had the Distinguished Service Medal in 1919, and he retired as Major General of the United States Marine Corps in October 1931. Then he became a lecturer in the 1930s and a Republican candidate for Senate in 1932, and in June 1940 he died. He was about 60 years old. I really need you to really understand what this guy is trying to say in this book. It's very, very important. And I've spent the past decade working for the military, British military, in the welfare capacity, not employed as a soldier. I've served my time with the military, I think, over the years. So I think I've got some kind of authority to read the book. Military minds are quite different to the majority of people, but they are human. The thing is, they're people who have this notion in their minds that they have to be courageous, they have to go and serve their country, especially in times of war. Now, it's really noble, honourable, courageous of these people to go and do that. And I was of that mind too, because I joined the TA because of the Falklands War. And I've been a partner of a military man as well, followed him around the country. And then I worked for a military charity and worked in Germany and in this country too. So my life has been centred around that area of life. Now, this man wrote a book in 1935 and it was called War Is A Racket. And I'm going to read that book to you. It was published by aristusbooks.com in 2012. But anyway, it says here, except in the United States of America, this book is sold subject to the condition that it shall not, I think there's a spelling error there, typo, it shall no, by the way of trade or otherwise be lent, resold, hired out, or otherwise circulated without the publisher's prior consent in any form of binding or cover other than at which it is published, and without similar condition, including this condition being imposed on the subsequent purchaser. Well, I'm not publishing it. I'm just reading it to you, and I'm urging you to buy it. It's on Amazon, and you can go to your library and get it. Please purchase only authorised electronic editions and do not participate in or encourage electronic piracy of copyrighted materials. Your support to the author's rights is appreciated. Well, the author of this book is General Smedley Butler. The person who republished it is not him. So I'm just going to read to you for free this book, and I'm urging you to go and buy it. This guy is something else. He has to be recommended, to be honoured, to be remembered, because although he was a major general, his thoughts, his concerns were with his troops, the men under his command. That I found in most officers in the British Army while I was with them. Chapter 1, War is a Racket. War is a racket. It always has been. It's possibly the oldest, easily the most profitable, and surely the most vicious. It is the only one international in scope. It is the only one in which the profits are reckoned in dollars and the losses in lives. A racket is best described, I believe, as something that is not what it seems to the majority of the people. Only a small inside group knows what it is about. It is conducted for the benefit of the very few at the expense of the very many. Out of war, a few people make huge fortunes. In the World War I, a mere handful garnered the profits of the conflict. At least 21,000 new millionaires and billionaires were made in the United States during the World War. That many admitted their huge blood gains in their income tax returns. How many other war millionaires falsified the tax returns? No one knows. How many of these war millionaires shouldered a rifle? How many of them dug a trench? How many of them knew what it was meant to go hungry in a rat-infested dugout? And how many of them spent sleepless, frightened nights ducking shells and shrapnel and machine gun bullets? And how many of them parried a bayonet thrust of an enemy? How many of them were wounded or killed in battle? Out of war, nations acquired additional territory if they were victorious. They just take it. This newly acquired territory promptly is exploited by the few, the self-same few who wrung dollars out of the blood in the war, and the general public shouldered the bill. And what was this bill? This bill renders a horrible accounting. Newly placed gravestones, mangled bodies, shattered minds, broken hearts and bones, economic instability, depression and all its attendant miseries, back-breaking taxation for generations and generations. For a great many years, as a soldier, I had a suspicion that war was a racket, but not until I retired to civil life did I fully realise it. Now that I see the international war clouds gathering, as they are today, I must face it and speak out. Again, they're choosing sides. France and Russia met to agree to stand side by side. Italy and Austria hurried to make a similar agreement. Poland and Germany cast sheep's eyes at each other, forgetting for the nonce, one unique occasion, their dispute over the Polish corridor. The assassination of King Alexander of Yugoslavia complicated matters. Yugoslavia and Hungary, long bitter enemies, were almost at each other's throats. Italy was ready to jump in, but France was waiting, so was Czechoslovakia. All of them looking ahead to war. Not the people, not those who fight and pay and die, only those who foment wars and remain safely at home to profit. There are 40 million men under arms in the world today, and our statesmen and diplomats have the temerity to say that war is not in the making. Hell's bells. Are these 40 million men being trained to be dancers? Not in Italy, to be sure. Premier Mussolini knows what they are being trained for. He at least is frank enough to speak out. Only the other day, the publication of the Carnegie Endowment for International Peace said the following: and above all, fascism, the more it considers and observes the future and the development of humanity, quite apart from political consideration of the moment, believes neither in the possibility nor the utility of perpetual peace. War alone brings up to its highest tension all the human energy and puts the stamp of nobility upon the people who have the courage to meet it. Undoubtedly, Mussolini means exactly what he says. His well-trained army, his great fleet of planes and his navy are ready for war. Anxious for it, apparently. His recent stand at the side of Hungary in the latter's dispute with Yugoslavia showed that, and the hurried mobilisation of his troops on the Austrian border after the assassination of Dollfuss showed it too. There are others in Europe, too, whose sabre-rattling presages war sooner or later. Herr Hitler, with his rearming Germany and his constant demands for more and more arms, is an equal, if not greater, menace to peace. France only recently increased the term of military service for its youth from a year to 18 months. Yes, all over. Nations are camping in their arms. The mad dogs of Europe are on the loose. In the Orient, the manoeuvring is more adroit. Back in 1904, when Russia and Japan fought, we kicked out our old friends the Russians and backed Japan. Then our very generous international bankers were financing Japan. Now the trend is to poison us against the Japanese. What does the open door policy to China mean to us? Our trade with China is about 90 million a year. Or the Philippine Islands. We spent about 600 million in the Philippines in 35 years, and we, that's our bankers and industrialists and speculators, have private investments there of less than 200 million. Then, to save that, China trade of about 90 million. Or to protect these private investments of less than 200 million in the Philippines, we would all be stirred up to hate Japan and go to war. A war that might well cost us tens of billions of dollars, hundreds of thousands of American lives, and many more hundreds of thousands of physically maimed and mentally unbalanced men. Of course, for this loss, there would be compensating profit, fortunes to be made. Millions and billions of dollars would be piled up by a few. Munitions makers, bankers, shipbuilders, manufacturers, meat packers, speculators. They would fare well. Yes, they're getting ready for another war. Why shouldn't they? It pays high dividends. But what does it profit the men who are killed? What does it profit their mothers and sisters, their wives and their sweethearts? What does it profit their children? And what does it profit anyone except the few to whom war means huge profits? Yes, and what does it profit the nation? Take our own case. Until 1898, we didn't own a bit of territory outside the mainland of North America. At that time, our national debt was little more than... Then we became internationally minded. We forgot, or shunted aside, the advice of the father of our country. We forgot George Washington's warnings about entangling alliances. We went to war. We acquired outside territory. At the end of the World War period, as a direct result of our fiddling in international affairs, our national debt had jumped to over... Our total favourable trade balance during the 25-year period was about... Therefore, on a purely bookkeeping basis, we ran a little behind year for year, and that foreign trade might well have been ours without the wars. It would have been a far cheaper, not to say safer, for the average American who pays the bills, to stay out of foreign entanglement. For a very few, this racket, like bootlegging and other underworld rackets, brings fancy profits. But the cost of operations is always transferred to the people, who do not profit. That's chapter 1.